Well, thank you all for coming. This is the meeting of the Local Housing Partnership for the 25th of February, and it is recording. And Helen is joining us. Welcome, everybody. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 21st. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at them? You want a minute to look them over? If not, whenever someone is ready, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. So it's been moved and seconded, the meeting minutes of the January 21st meeting. Any other discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays and any abstentions? Susan, thank you very much as always for great minutes. Much appreciated.
In case I'm asleep by the end, no, I won't be asleep by the end, but I'm not going to be able to be here next time, so I need a substitute.
All right, so we're not exactly sure next time is scheduled yet. So
okay.
Change the date. So
on the presumed date, I couldn't be, but I'll wait.
Let's see who will be here and whether we need to appoint someone. Okay, so the second order of business is, let me get my agenda out here, membership. So
can we hold off on that just for a minute? Elizabeth just got home. She's going to be.
Yes, I see actually someone logging in. So.
Yes, right there. Okay, well we could
All
do
right.
it.
Oh, well, that's fine. Why don't we? I'll talk briefly about the buy down, and then we'll come back to membership.
Okay.
Okay. So everyone knows that we have a buy down grant application open. The closing date is March 5th. So I want to make sure the 5th or the 3rd, I can't now.
5th, I think.
5th, yeah. But guys, we have had a huge amount of interest. So we have had over 30 inquiries already, and that number is increasing. And we actually have some people that must be very well organized because they have gotten in their application with full information weeks in advance. It seems like there's a lot of interest out there. So if you know of anybody who is interested or thinking about it, now is the time for them to get on the stick and get their application in. They have a great chance of winning $175,000 lottery. Well worth a little bit of effort.
Gary, how many applications have you actually received already?
As of last Wednesday, we had received one. So I don't know, we look at them every Wednesday. So we'll know in a couple of days, but no, excuse me, not yesterday, but a week ago Wednesday. So we will know next Wednesday how many, but as I say, it seems like the number of inquiries is up probably twice as many as we've ever had before. So there's clearly a lot of interest. All right, any other questions about the buy down? So Erin, you want to take the floor and introduce?
Yes.
Okay.
So you'll see on your screen, it says Jason Weisman, but it's actually Elizabeth Salen. And Elizabeth is joining us today as a guest to see if she might want to step into Maddie Antel's space. And I would be no pressure, Elizabeth, but you know, she checks off so many boxes. She's young, she has young children, she's in a shell fishing family, and you know, and she's like struggled with housing. So I think her perspective could really be helpful to us because we're sort of lacking that. We're lacking that perspective. So welcome, Elizabeth. I hope you stay.
Welcome, Elizabeth. I think for everyone's benefit, we'll just go maybe starting at mine. It's the top left. Elaine, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hi, Elizabeth. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for thinking about doing this.
Great. I'm Gary Sorkin, and I am the chair of the partnership. You're up, Judy.
You're muted, Elizabeth.
No, Judy.
You want me to say, I'm Judy Taylor and I'm a member of the Local Housing Partnership.
Harry.
Hi, I'm Harry Tukanian. I'm a member of the newly formed Affordable Housing Trust.
So Elizabeth, very important. Harry's the new money man in town. So
Who's completely, there's nothing in the piggy bank right now.
right. We're working on it.
Yep.
So you know Sharon, Susan.
I'm Susan Spear, and I'm a member of the Local Housing Partnership.
Thank you.
Hi,
Jan.
I'm Jan Morrissey, and I'm an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm the Zoning Board's member on the Local Housing Partnership.
Helen.
Yeah.
Helen, you're muted.
Hi, I'm just audience. Hi, I'm here because I was asked to be and am interested in one of your agenda items. I used to be on the Housing Authority briefly. Then I've also been on the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board. And now I'm on the Select Board, but the reason I'm here doesn't have anything to do with my being on the Select Board. It has to do with my skill set obtained when I did those other things. Thank you. Also, I was on 2 affordable housing task forces back in the day. Thank you.
Excellent. Who's left? Olga.
I'm a visitor. I'm auditing.
A visitor from another country.
Exciting.
Right. So we have a hot topic that's coming up right after this.
And
which
did
is
John
interview.
introduce himself?
Yes, John, I'm sorry, you're next.
Yeah, yes, I'm John Kumbler, and I'm on the Housing Partnership representing the Open Spaces Committee.
So we have some people who are members at large and some people who represent committees. And the idea is to leverage the relationship between the various committees in town to develop strategies for better affordable housing. So we welcome you here, and we would love to have you join us, and we can talk about how to do that. It's very simple. All you do is let the folks know at Town Hall. If Rebecca's still on, it would be Rebecca or I can't think of her name now, but Jeannie Mack at Town Hall, and they will take care of it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I
Terrific.
look forward to learn.
I did want to reiterate what Sharon said, is that Maddie Entel did say she wanted to go do some other things. And so she did tender her resignation a couple weeks ago. But thank you very much and welcome aboard.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so the next item of business is why we have a number of visitors today, and is a very hotly discussed item, which is the proposal to create an ADU bylaw, an affordable dwelling unit bylaw. And Sharon has really been in the lead on this, and she's going to lead us in this discussion. Sharon.
Hi, guys. So some of you may know, or were even in discussions way back more than a year ago. Hi, Jan. And looking at meeting with the planning board and trying to come up with draft bylaw proposals that might pass muster with the planning board. And we didn't make much progress last year. And we started up again this November and have still not made a whole lot of progress. The planning board has a lot of concerns, and I understand that. I think the main concern that I keep hearing from them is that there aren't enough properties in town that would meet all the requirements in order to build an ADU. And our response to that is, well, you know, even if there's only a handful of properties, that's more than we have now. So you've got a copy of a bylaw proposal that Helen drafted, and it's not finished. It's still definitely very much of a living document, and nobody would ask you to make any kind of decisions tonight. But the main points that that we're hoping to include in the bylaw is that, number one, an ADU would be allowed by right, so you would not have to go to the ZBA for a special permit. That there would be, if that's, it would be allowed by right as long as it meets all of the laws stipulated in the zoning bylaws and met health requirements. And so, in other words, many laws that are covering the construction of these or the permitting of these are covered in various places in the zoning bylaw, and it was felt unnecessary to repeat all of those. So it would have to meet all those laws, and there's a piece that allows you to get a special, that allows you to go for a special permit, to request a special permit if there's some variance that you seek. There's a process. You might get it, you might not. The other thing is very important is that these be rented year-round only and not be available for short-term rentals. So that would require a registration with town and the presentation of a year-round lease once a year, probably in September, to a designated town official. And that part is very important. And I'm trying to think of what other highlights there are. You all read it. Do you have questions at this point? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jan.
I have a number of questions. So my first question is, I listened to the Zoom planning board meeting. So it's my understanding that they are no longer going to pursue this at this point.
Right.
So who now is the sponsor of your proposal?
Well, I would be through you, basically, through the LHP.
Okay, I would say that we need to be very careful, because if the local housing partnership is sponsoring this, or the housing authority, that's fine. But if it's coming forward as a citizen's petition, then we can't work on it. Under state ethics laws, we are, although we're volunteers, we're all considered employees of the town of Wellfleet, and we can only use our skills and talents to do the work of the town. We can't do the work, any board or committee meeting, of a citizen on a citizen's petition. So that's something we see straighten out.
So I appreciate your greater depth of knowledge on this. I find the whole thing very confusing, but I did spend a fair amount of time today. The charge for the local housing partnership, which actually is on our agenda, one of the items is to draft bylaws and regulations that in support of housing. And so I talked to the attorney of the day today and said that I was on the local housing partnership, and that I had, with the backing of the partnership, because this has been going on for quite a while now, and it's come up at various meetings, and I've been given the go-ahead, that I'm acting within my charge. And
Okay.
she said I was.
The local partnership is sponsored. Okay.
Let's be clear. We haven't yet voted to actively, but it's certainly appropriate for us to work on it.
Yeah, but not if it's a citizen's petition.
Well, I think it isn't anything yet. The question, I think, is what's the best strategy, and do we endorse what is being offered?
So it couldn't be a petitioned article, Jan? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. And maybe through you, Gary, Harry can add something to this, but
sure. We
can't do work on a citizen's petition as board and committee members. I know we can't, but Harry has something to add. Gary, I don't know.
Well, I guess again, this is, I would certainly rely on advice from the Ethics Commission attorney of the day, first of all, because the ground rules there are if you make a complete and accurate disclosure to them and they give you advice, you follow that advice. That's a safe harbor. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, you know, routinely when citizens petitions are filed, they're circulated by the town administration, the relevant boards and committees for not necessarily for wordsmithing, but at least for you know, to express positions of, you know, what the committee's position is on the proposal. So, you know, committee boards and committees do get to speak to the merits of these particular proposals. The third comment is that the path for zoning amendments, I think, is a little different. The Zoning Act has specific language that discusses the process for amending a zoning bylaw, and it starts with filing a petition, believe it or not, with the select board. And there is a whole host of people that can file petitions, including property owners, 10 voters. There's a big, long list. And the select board is obligated to transmit it to the planning board. And the planning board's obligated to consider it and hold hearings and go through the same process as if they had sponsored the article themselves. So that's kind of the route you follow. I don't think it's necessarily a 10 citizen petition.
Right. At this point, I think it's not a petition since no petition has been either solicited or entered, as far as I know. Is that correct, Sharon?
That's true. It's at this point,
It's a discussion.
Drafting an article. It's
Yeah.
drafting a proposed draft article.
All right. So is it appropriate for us to be discussing this, given our charge to develop bylaw suggestions? So I thought it was yes, but Harry, do you have a different opinion?
No, I don't.
Okay. So Jan, I think that's the answer
Just
to your
wanna be
question.
all clear on it, that's all.
Yeah. I think it's appropriate for us to certainly discuss it. I think at this point, it's not yet a petition as far as I know. And the question I think we have is let's look at the merits and see what we want to do going forward. Helen, you have your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yes, and through you to Harry, just to listen to what I'm saying as I drone on. Jan, my understanding, and I made my own call to the Ethics Commission, so I'm glad Sharon did too, is that what a town official can't do, like the select board can't do, the town clerk can't do, is look at a petition when it's turned in and say, these words you can't do. You can't, the town clerk, for example, can't look at a petition and say, you have to change this. All they can do is accept it within the framework of acceptance, which is, in our case, 60 days before town meeting.
Yeah, that's really not what I was saying, but that's okay.
And I also
I think we settled it. I just wanted to bring it up and make sure we were all on the same page.
I also think what.
Thank you, Jan.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, all right. Jan, I also think it's a timing issue a little bit because if you look at our minutes from the last meeting, we thought it was coming through the planning board. Since that last meeting, it has changed in terms of what initiation process. So now it's certainly appropriate for us to say, does it make sense for us to go forward? Okay.
I have a few other questions, but if somebody else wants to go first.
No, go ahead, Shan.
Gary, can I Gary, I have another meeting. I'm sorry I have to leave early, but I have to leave.
All right. Thank you, John. And we'll catch you up as needed on what happens.
Okay.
Thank you again. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Jan, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm unclear as to what is going on here. So Sharon sent something that's titled Helen's draft or something. Is that is this replacing the existing 621, or is this getting tacked on to the beginning of 621? The existing 21?
May I answer that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so the document you got, which as Sharon said very accurately, it's a living document. For example, Elaine Mclroy and I had an exchange this morning and I drafted it in already. What I did was purely as a drafting workhorse, right? In a sense, I have no opinion about this, except I like doing this and have been doing it for a long time in various ways. So I got a sense from a variety of people, in particular the three housing women, Olga, Elaine, and Sharon, about this. Went through all the zoning bylaws to see what else might have to be tweaked. And the document that you were sent is even a little bit changed since you were sent it. And it is something that when you're looking at the bylaw itself, you might only want to look at the bylaw and the numbers. This was pointed out.
That's all, well, I think.
Yeah, disregard the numbers because they could be one thing or another when this is all done. But what I would do is look at it, look at what you've got, take it in, ask questions, and then wait for a final document because we have time for that. And whether it's petitioned or not is another matter. In other words, if you petition it, it guarantees that it's getting on the warrant because the select board could decide not to put it on the warrant.
I'm not getting that question.
That's something for everybody to discuss. So
I don't know what this is. Are you tacking? I don't care about the numbering. Are you?
Can you stick it on the screen so I can see what you're looking at, please?
What?
That is the document that was sent to Sharon.
What are you doing with this? Do you intend to, are you replacing the existing 621 affordable?
No.
You want to this on the beginning of it?
I was, once again, disregard the numbers. I was tasked with doing something that would stand alone, right, to draft it, and not to consider, except of course I read it carefully again, having worked on it years ago, the AADU. This is a standalone thing which doesn't do what the AADU did in terms of folding in the whole qualification as a person who needs an affordable, an income qualification, which we have been told in no uncertain terms, quite correctly, as it turns out, isn't something that should go in a zoning bylaw. So what you got the other day was everything that might be changed in the zoning bylaws if this is put in, but consider it as standalone, and perhaps the AADU could be removed from the zoning bylaws. That's another question that we're not at yet. The question to me, for me, when I was drafting it in collaboration with the three housing women and some other people, was simply, does this work if you need to make a ZBA determination? Is it simple? Does it cover everything you might need to look at? And how does it fit in the whole context of the zoning bylaws? Which is why I changed some other things, which is attached, Jan. Does that help with clarifying what the document consists of?
Sort of. Okay. And then I'm just going to say, I think it has a number of drafting issues. I'm technical drafting issues, and we don't need to go into that, but I just think it has issues.
But, Elaine, I see that you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think your question, Jan, is still part of the discussion.
Yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's 100% settled. And
I had the same reaction when I saw it, Jan, is that as it's written, it seems to suggest that it's replacing the AADU bylaw with this bylaw, and I found that problematic.
Just quickly, the first paragraph of 621 seems to, you define it in the definitions, and then you use totally different, you define it again in a different way in 621, and that, I think that's that's something that you should reconsider and address. The way I understand what you're getting at about a special permit, but the way it's worded, it's like, it seems that you need a special permit to get an accessory dwelling unit, and there's just a number of other things. I think there's drafting issues.
Okay. Can we back up? Let's think about what we want to accomplish rather than respond to this particular document, understanding that it's a in transition living discussion. Is it the intent to replace the existing AADU with a new ADU bylaw or to keep the old one and add another one?
Can I answer that? I think in conversations with the planning board, and we are still trying to consider planning board considerations, we sort of had gotten to the place where we thought one bylaw that covered both AADUs and ADUs was appropriate, and that the owner of such an accessory dwelling could rent it either affordably and apply for the tax abatement, or they could rent it at market value, market rate, and make sure the town knew to not give them any tax abatement. And that way, that would cover those situations where people who might be living in an AADU and suddenly get a raise, for example, won't have to leave their housing because they now make too much money. So that's one piece of that. And the other thing I just want to remind here is that this is like, I wish we were much further along, but because we were trying very hard to work with the planning board, I feel like we're getting a later start than I would like. But the intention really is to be talking to everybody, to the health agent, to the building inspector, to various attorneys with experience in land, in zoning issues, to really, beat the bushes for opinions. And I think what we would really like to do is to continue with that work. And we have a goal of getting it. I mean, if we want to send it as a petitioned article or to the select board, I'm not sure, I'm a little fuzzy on the distinction there. We have until like April 1st, or technically April 5th, but we're trying to give ourselves a little cushion. So I would really love it if we could take the various pieces that we have, because this is one iteration of many, and work with the various people that I just mentioned to pull something together and then come back to this committee, say, the third week in March, so that we could see if, or the second week, so that you would have more time to make your own opinions or state in questions, whatever.
Any other comments? I have some other questions, but any other, Jan, do you have other questions that you'd like to raise?
I don't know how to, I don't know how to comment on that. I have to see a whole bylaw that you're presenting, not just bits and pieces.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to judge it. I don't know where you're going.
Jerry?
Yes, Helen, go ahead.
Jan, the whole bylaw as it exists, which does not have to be long if there's language in it that deals with all possible situations, is in the chunk of the document that's labeled 621 accessory dwelling unit. That is the bylaw. It doesn't need anything more elaborate than that. The other sections are simply parts of the zoning bylaws that need to be tweaked in relation to it if it gets passed.
I didn't include those.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe we could just back up a second for everyone's benefit. Can you just say, what are you trying to accomplish with this that would change the zoning in Wellfleet? It would allow people to...
Currently, people, number one, have to get a special permit to build any kind of accessory dwelling. And they're not allowed to build they're not allowed to build accessory dwelling units per se. They're only allowed currently to build ones that meet affordability requirements. So we would like to allow by right the possibility of building smaller homes for a variety of people who don't need a large space, and that they can be rented at market rate, which for a smaller home is not going to be a hugely outrageous amount. given that it has to be year round.
Helen, why don't we give other folks that have any comment on that? Yes, Elaine.
Okay, well, this has been something we've been wrestling with for a long time. We see it as an important tool to open up the range of rental housing that's available to people. There's virtually nothing. It's a way to do it in, we think, a manner that's appropriate to the town. Nationally, it's such a huge movement now, and the state of Massachusetts is supporting ADUs in a big way under their new housing choice program in changing the zoning so that it just takes a majority vote, because they see this as such an important tool for opening up rental housing, especially in areas like ours where we don't have big pieces of land where we spend gazillions of dollars to create rentals. This way, the people that have property and the will to do it for whatever reason, family, friend, it opens that up. I think we also feel, I think the by right is important, but also to allow it as a special permit. It's important that we have the special legislation that if it's only one bylaw, people can still take the tax break if their tenant qualifies. I think we also see it as a potential way to bring the really a number of the illegal apartments we have in town to light. And we'd be very interested in finding ways to support that with monies we might have available, incentives. And Wellfleet's affordable accessory dwelling bylaw was amazing. It was forward thinking. And I think I can't say it's forward thinking when they've been in existence for 20 years, but all the research also points out that if you want people to do it, you have to have as few restrictions as possible while you make sure it checks all the boxes for septic, health, setbacks. If you make it too restrictive, it doesn't happen. If you have the people that want to do it and it's too restrictive, it's not going to happen. So we would like to be progressive. We'd like to, really try to bring this home in a way that works for Wellfleet and provides more housing.
Elaine and Sharon or whomever, can you explain that this has been done many places in the state and on the Cape, and essentially the format of the model bylaw, and maybe where that comes from?
Yeah, most of the towns in the Cape, at least 8 or perhaps 9 by now towns have allowed them. Some are special permit and some are by right and some are special permit in certain zones. And the ones that are the least restrictive are the ones that have had the most success getting ADUs built. Although we're not talking about huge numbers. We're talking about 4 or 5 a year, not 50. And across Massachusetts, I know that there's a fellow in Western Massachusetts who's really his business is building ADUs, and I think his business is doing quite well. It's really a growing theme as a means of producing less expensive, more affordable, more diverse living possibilities.
So it's not a novel idea, and it has some track record, and it's certainly being adopted widely on the Cape.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to establish. Helen, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, a couple things, but we're a home rule state, thank goodness, and this bylaw has to be special for us, right? And I already have drafted into the document Jan's note that it was a little unclear that it's only if, let's say, somebody wants to pop out, add a kind of wing to their house, right? Doesn't have to be small. It just has to be appropriate to the lot legally, right? Let's say the reason it should be by right is simply to make it easier. And there was quite a lot of input that I got and others got about, let's not have this be by special permit. In other words, it has to comply, as a number of us have said, with CONSCOM's regulations, environmental regulations, Board of Health, zoning bylaws. But what if it doesn't? What if you can do it nicely on your lot and you want to go 2 feet into the setback, right? That's the moment at which, and it's included in this article, and I put it in a separate paragraph so it's clearer, Jan. Let's say you can't do it by right because you want to go 2 feet into a setback. And you know very well that that means you make an application. The property owner should be able to do what anybody else can do, right? Which is to seek relief from the ZBA or the Board of Health. And those boards should be able to look at it and say, this is detrimental to the neighborhood. We're not going to let you go into the setback. And then that's that. But they should be able to apply, maybe get a variance from the ZBA, from the Board of Health, maybe get a special permit. But that's a secondary thing. If they comply with everything, it just happens normally, which means the building inspector approves it, has to happen according to state building code. You need a certificate of occupancy because it's a second dwelling, and the health agent always has to come in on it. That's when you don't have any problems and you don't have to go to any boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Jan, did you have another question or
I
response?
just want to clarify something. I've read the ADU bylaws of a number of towns and I know what you're trying to do and I don't take umbrage with that at all. I'm talking strictly about the technical aspects of writing a viable law. And Sharon, I think in your email, you mentioned something that about at some point you're going to show it to perhaps a lawyer who has expertise. And I might suggest that you try to do that sooner rather than later, because I think there are technical aspects to the way this is written now that really needs a legal eye.
Okay, thank you.
And one other thing, the bylaw that exists now,
Yes.
which is by special permit for affordable accessory dwelling units, allows up to 3 on a lot.
Right.
I can't imagine that you would allow that by right. And I can't imagine that you would want to write a bylaw that doesn't allow for that possibility. So I don't know if you're taking that into consideration, but I'm just bringing it up.
Right. So,
Carrie?
And I'm done.
So we thought about that. And by the way, I was there when that language got put into the AADU and the size restriction. Here's the point. The real limitation in terms of the environment and density and neighborhood, right, is can that lot afford what is being proposed, right? So if it's a huge lot, and I could immediately think of a few, and somebody wanted to have it done legitimately, totally legally, and they had enough space for septic, enough space, why shouldn't it happen? And why should there be a number limit or a size limit on the unit, given that there are restrictions simply because of lot size, proximity to wetland, and so forth? And it took me a while to sort through that when I was thinking about it. And I have to say that when the AADU was originally drafted, I thought it was made overcomplicated. And as it turns out, as I mentioned earlier, the whole thing about qualifying for affordability should have been totally not in a zoning bylaw, but something that was applied by another section of the town. And that's a whole other matter. It has to happen according to the state law that annual town meeting passed. And not everybody might want to apply for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. And are there other questions that folks on the partnership have? If not, I think the question is, where do we go from here in terms of our participation with this? Is there, Sharon, did I understand it correctly that your ad hoc group, I don't know how else to, is going to work on something and you would like to come back with a more complete proposal in the near future?
Yes, yes. Well, as I said, our goal for submitting it as a petitioned article would be April 1st. And so I would love to have this group, if people are willing, to meet again sometime mid-March, so that hopefully by then, and that would require a lot of work on our part, I get that. But to come back at that time and speak again with this group so that we could, with something that's more complete.
Okay.
And that we feel like we've vetted it in a variety of different places, so that this group could then respond and hopefully support.
And how much time do you need to do that, Sharon, or group?
Well, before the next meeting?
Well,
Or-
I'm trying to figure out when we should have the next meeting. How much time do you need to come back with a more complete?
Well, I think if we want to get it out on by April 1st and give this group a chance to take a look at it,
Mhm.
then I would say the second or third week of March. Or right, Elaine, would you agree with that timeline?
So Elaine, we have a housing authority meeting on the 4th. So I'm going to assume that you'll have something for that meeting, not necessarily.
No, I think I'll just have to ask the housing authorities authorization for me to keep working on it as a member of
Okay.
the housing authority.
So just looking at my calendar, so the second, doesn't have to be a Thursday, but we traditionally meet on Thursday, is the 11th or the 18th.
How about the 18th?
So you think you'll have something definitive and that will still give you enough time to pursue it?
I think if we don't, then we're in trouble.
Right. I would make two observations, and I don't have any problem with that. You mentioned 4 or 5 units. Well, that would be a large number if we were to do that in a year in Wellfleet, number one. But number two is, I don't want to see us jeopardize what is a somewhat successful program in the AADU. We may say we only have 10 or 12 units, but in a town like Wellfleet, that's not an insignificant number. So I think you have to both protect what we have as well as propose.
I totally agree. And I think that part of that process is really coming up with ideas to incentivize, which is something that I would hope to address with the trust at some point. But, it's kind of like juggling one and the other. But ways that we could give people more incentive to stay with the AADU program.
Okay.
Whether it's in low interest loans or whatever.
So is it appropriate for us to say, come back on the 18th? In this context, you are representing your citizen group, but you're also a member of the.
No, I can't represent the two. So
you're representing the housing partnership in a drafting position. We're not endorsing anything at this point.
Right.
Okay, and that's appropriate. Harry, is that an appropriate undertaking?
Say that again. I was looking for something.
Yeah, is it okay for us to say, Sharon, in your role as a member of the housing partnership, go work on this draft and come back to us with more complete information?
Well, I was just about to pull up my copy of the
Of the charge?
charge
Yeah.
to look at it.
Right.
It says draft.
It says it very explicitly, Harry.
Well, then, that's part of the LHP's charge, and it should be appropriate that you do so. I don't see an
Right.
issue with that.
Okay, so I did send this out. I sent it out actually in another context, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it says the local housing partnership shall include but not be limited to draft bylaws. So it's fairly explicit in that regard. Okay, are people comfortable in saying, Sharon, you go work on this with your group representing as a member of the housing partnership and come back and report to us on the 18th? Yes? Okay. I don't think it's a vote, but it's an understanding.
Great.
All right. Is there anything else? Anything else on the bylaw change or ADU you want to add?
Not for me. Not
Anybody
now.
else? No. And Olga, I know you've been quiet, but thank you very much for your participation in this. Thank you. Okay, shall we move on to the next agenda item? Which I'm looking for my agenda here. What is the next? Here it is.
The Housing Angels tax.
Okay, the
insertion.
Housing Angels. Okay, so I sent to you, there is, we were approved by the select board, and I did talk to the town collector so that in the spring real estate tax bill mailing, we will have, what is that, 1/3, as we've had in the past, that will look like that Housing Angel with a little diagram. And Olga, thank you very much for putting it in that context. So we have been approved for that. The broader one is the Housing Angel concept, and if we want to promote that going forward. And Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, just so with Karen Kaminsky, who's not here tonight, and Olga was also very helpful. We drafted this sort of open letter that the intention was that it might get either posted in the Independent as kind of an op-ed, or I don't know, long letter to the editor or something, or it might be cut down more and used as kind of something that gets posted in the Independent like a couple times a year. I mean, the goal really is to see if we can't get, because we're so slim on land and it's so expensive, to see if we can't get people, encourage people, put the idea in their head to either donate land or sell it to us for a reduced price, donate homes. And then there's a list of other ways that they can get involved that are obviously helpful. Even sending money in on the tax insert is, it's all good. But just trying to encourage people to think of themselves as part of the solution, whether they're year-round residents or whether they're second homeowners or even seasonal visitors. We have a housing problem and it's going to really affect our quality of life, and how can everybody work on this? That's the intent.
Any comments or observations that folks have? Go ahead, Jan.
I think it's a great letter. Whoever wrote it, or it's a group, that you did a great job. I have two suggestions, or actually one suggestion and one comment. You use the term "we" throughout. It's not necessarily clear who "we" is. So my suggestion would be that when you use the term "we" right away in the beginning, instead of "we," say Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust, if that's who's, and then "we," just to identify yourself. And the other thing is that bullet point number 4 on the last page, and I don't have it in front of me, but my note says there's a willingness to build accessory dwelling units. at the moment, we don't allow accessible
No, I
accessory
know.
dwelling units. So I would
Right.
recommend you say affordable accessory dwelling units or whatever.
Yeah,
Do you
Okay.
want to wait until we resolve even if you're, actually, it's a question, even if you're successful, we are successful with a draft article, a petition article at the town meeting, when would it actually take effect that someone could build based upon that?
It-
Doesn't the AG have to approve articles?
You enter a never, never land because in general, the understanding is that the zoning bylaw is effective when voted by town meeting, but it's subject to review by the Attorney General's office, and they have a period of time when they can object to the approval based on, inconsistency with, general laws or constitution of the Commonwealth. So it's possible to proceed under a bylaw that's been voted and then have the Attorney General pull the rug out from under your feet. So typically, prudent people wait 90 days after the bylaw has been voted so that the Attorney General's time to object has passed.
So given that, my question back is this something that you want to promote now or wait until you have a resolution on the ADU question?
you're asking me?
I'm asking in general.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, if, in all actual, really, if we put it in the independent, we'd like it to be in there sometime when there's some seasonal homeowners around.
So I'm just trying to figure out when if in fact we launch this marketing effort, how and when do we do it? And I see your hand, Jen, I'll get you in a second, but we also have a little bit of money left from another project that we could potentially use for this. And we could do a hard copy mailing as we've done in the past, which actually was fairly successful. So the question is, where do we go from here? Jan?
Oh, well, I forgot to take my hand down, but since you asked me, my personal feeling would be you do it now, just change the wording of accessory dwelling unit to affordable accessory dwelling units, and you can always change it to something else if that bylaw gets passed.
Okay.
And put it out there again.
So is this something we would like to promote more fully? I think so. If I understand it correctly, this is a request. Give us your home. Consider giving us our homes, consider selling it at a reduced price. And the same thing would be true for vacant land. Obviously there's a general donate, but in terms of what you want to accomplish out of this effort, that's it?
Are you
I'm
asking?
asking in general, yeah. Anyone can respond. Yes, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea too. I think the letter is excellent. I think there was one little sentence I wanted to suggest a tweak. I think it's the time to do it, but probably what you did should now go to the Housing Authority and the trust just to get everybody on the same page. But I think it's a great outreach.
So Sharon, I'm sorry, Elaine. The other thing was, Anne isn't here, but is it her son or her son-in-law who's the graphic artist?
Oh, it's her son-in-law.
Son-in-law, yeah. So at the last meeting, Anne volunteered perhaps that he would be willing. He did the last housing brochure.
He did the Lawrence Road one.
He did the Lawrence Road one, right. So I wonder if we could get with him and we could spiff up the letter and maybe get some kind of a draft of a brochure. And then we could revisit this on the 18th when we have another meeting, and it's really the Housing Authority authorizes the expenditure of money. So Elaine, maybe we could put this on the agenda for the 4th.
Sorry.
That's right. So that at the end of March, we would be in a position to really launch this both by letter and Facebook and by this hard copy.
So you're asking me or Ann to ask Darren to have something by the next time we meet, the 18th?
Yeah,
Is
if you can. I mean, obviously, a lot depends upon whether he can do it or not, but, you know, it can't hurt to ask. And she did volunteer that at the last meeting.
Yeah. Well, I know Darren also. I
Okay.
mean, he's not my son-in-law, but you know, he's a nice guy.
Your influence may be a little less, but you can certainly request. Elaine,
But he'll need text if you want, other than the letter, to be part of the brochure. He
right.
needs text from us. He can't create.
But if
So-
you show him the letter, maybe he can take out the appropriate, and really we're translating some prose into bullet points for the
I mean,
for the
we will be
brochure.
getting those data points from the Cape Cod Commission too.
Yes.
Which could be
When will we have those graphics, do you think, Elaine?
Well, they were supposed to send us sort of the bullet points very soon, and the graphics were a couple of more weeks.
Elaine and I met with county people responsible for the data collection and manipulation about getting some statistics to support a variety of things, both the 95 Lawrence as well as this effort, and really to talk about how hard it is for the average person to buy a house or rent a place in Wellfleet, and what data shows about the increasing affordability gap. So that would be certainly something we could incorporate into this.
That might move our timeline back a little,
Okay.
you know.
Let's see what we get.
Gary, this
Yes,
is Harry.
Harry.
Do you need an agenda item for the Housing Trust meeting on March 15th on this?
Uh,
I could certainly
We
fit one in.
we have the trust later in the meeting, Harry.
Okay.
So we could do that, because I also have the grant application, which I'm going to talk about shortly.
Okay.
Okay, so with regard to Housing Angels, the action is to come up with a little more detailed marketing program to support the effort, and potentially verbiage and graphics to go into both a letter and a brochure that we would mail out, and to make a request of the Housing Authority to expend money to do that.
I'll just say, you know, I'm happy to contact Darren.
Yeah.
And show him, you know, send him this and say, we have some data coming and that kind of stuff. But, you know, if it's about marketing savvy and, you know, whatever you just said, then maybe someone else could take a stab at it.
Why don't you talk to him? Is there anybody else who would like to volunteer to work on this, has an interest in this?
I mean, Karen Kaminsky was on.
I was going to say, Karen certainly is a good person, and I would certainly be able to help. But if you take the lead and let us know on the 18th, or between now and the 18th, we can talk, Sharon, about it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else on the Housing Angels? So the next item is 95 Lawrence. I noticed Elaine walked away, so I was going to call on her to give me the update on 95 Lawrence, but we did have a meeting this week. Elaine, I was just going to ask you to give an update on 95 Lawrence.
I was just stretching.
Right.
Okay, 95 Lawrence. I thought we had a very good 95 Lawrence Road meeting this past week. A little frustrating because we didn't have the final draft of the RFP in hand, but our consultant Laura Schufelt from Mass Housing Partnership has assumed 3 positions at her agency right now, as they've lost employees. But we are hoping to have everything finalized and into the select board for their March 9th meeting to approve the RFP, and then it will be released as soon after that as possible. So we're just getting the final pieces together and hoping it's now the optimal time to attract developers and give them the time to produce a good proposal to get it out, you know, as soon as we can now. It would have been good to have this all probably finalized at a February select board meeting, but that didn't happen. But we're working very hard. One of the other little hiccups is that we need a certified procurement officer to basically, give their blessing to the RFP, and we've contacted the county procurement officer, and we're waiting to hear back from her if she can provide that service for us. So I don't know, I think that's about it.
So I would only add that we have a final review meeting scheduled for Wednesday the 3rd, next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So if anyone is interested, that'll be a Zoom meeting, and that's where we will theoretically finalize any and all issues and verbiage and send it to the select board for a final review on the 9th.
Thank you for mentioning that, so I will post it. That's a good
Thank
reminder.
you.
And I'd be happy to send to all of you too, if you haven't gotten it. Carl Sussman, who is on the 95 Lawrence Street Task Force, really took on the lead to produce a sort of update information sheet, in particular for the abutters, because we have someone who's been very following this closely, who is an abutter, who is supportive, and is willing to share information and kind of reach out to his neighbors. So Carl really did an excellent update sheet, which we are going to add the Cape Cod Commission figures to once they come, but I'd love to send that to you, and we're hoping to get it on the town website too as a way of outreach to show people, what's been going on.
I would love to have that, Elaine.
Yeah.
So Elaine, you'll send that out? Yes.
Do we have any idea how many, or if any, or what developers might be interested in responding?
That was a topic of conversation at the last 95 Lawrence meeting. If you talk about the likely population that would receive it, there is approximately 7 developers. There was a little bit of difference about how many might respond, but I think the number is more likely to be between 2 and 3.
Laura mentions 3 to 4.
Yes,
thought,
and
is
others mentioned we'd be lucky to get somebody. So we'll see what actually transpires. And going back to what Elaine said, 2 things. If the select board approves it on the 9th, then it has to go to something called the Central Registry, which is this state database that you put in all contracts that you're asking for bids on. So it has to be posted there first, and then we can actually go out and solicit other people, as well as put advertisements in the paper. So it's likely we have to give, probably we'll end up giving close to 3 months from whenever it gets on the registry, but it is likely to be due sometime around June 15th. Responses due June 15th, and then we would select someone by August and end of August. And all of this is being driven by the state funding calendar opens sometime around November or December. And it's really state funding that drives the project. So theoretically, we could select someone in August. They would have then enough time to do the work necessary to put in an application for funding, which would be considered in the November or December timeframe.
Eric, can I just add, and this thought hit me after our meeting, the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force is the evaluation committee, and then we're very pleased that Maria Broadbent, our new TA, is going to assist, as is Harry, as a member of the trust and a lot of experience. Those meetings, the evaluation meetings, are open meetings. Anybody's welcome to attend. We also did request that the people who make the proposals come and give a presentation, which isn't scored as part of the evaluation. I forgot that it's COVID. I don't know if that's actually going to be able to happen, or they would give Zoom presentations. I imagine. But after our meeting was over and we decided we definitely wanted to have in the RFP that they would have to come and give a presentation. I'm not sure what we should do about that.
Well,
I bet they're used to Zoom presentations by now.
Yeah. Right.
and I also think it's after the close of the date, June 15th-ish, and before the decision, August, whatever. So it may be by then we will be able to do some site visits and some meetings in person, but we just don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. You know, it occurs to me, I don't know, I'm sorry Helen isn't still here, but is the select board considering a agenda item for town meeting regarding the funding of the septic? Of the wastewater treatment?
We don't know.
Shouldn't that be part of this? Can they wait a whole year before they tackle that approval again? Or anew?
Yeah,
Harry, you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think in terms of actual construction, I don't think any construction is going to take place anytime before the 2022 annual town meeting.
Okay.
But at the same time, you know, the more commitment you have from the town to support a project, the more it encourages developers to think that you're taking this seriously.
Right.
So, you know, a vote to authorize the borrowing to do that is probably not a bad thing, because it's it's a statement by the town that we're willing to put our financial muscle behind doing this project.
Okay.
So
I think that would also be a good selling point to the town. I mean, if the town votes the money, it shows that we're serious about getting the right kind of septic system in.
So that may be something, Elaine, that we have to pursue in terms of an agenda item for the next meeting.
Well, I think, you know, we can reach out and ask the wastewater committee and the select board if
Yeah,
there's been
right.
any discussion. Yeah, okay. Got it.
Okay, so are there other questions about 95 Lawrence or other comments that folks have? Very exciting, and you know, we're moving ahead with what would be by far and away the biggest housing project, or frankly, the biggest project that Wellfleet ever undertook. Okay, so the next item of business is the trust fund. And that is why I also sent out the charge. There is a discussion going on now about, okay, we have the trust fund, we have the housing authority, and we have the partnership. How do they interrelate? You know, what should be the relationship between them, and who should be responsible for what? And in this regard, we have a grant opportunity. Mass Housing Partnership, MHP, has put out a grant opportunity for them to choose 2 towns to work with on their trust integration, which is exactly what this is all about. And so what I'd like for you to consider is, should we endorse putting in an application? Unfortunately, it's due March 5th. So we have asked CDP in their role as our technical advisors on housing to draft a response to this. But it basically would mean somebody from MHP coming down and really serving as the moderator and the helper in us integrating our various housing programs and committees. So what we need is a motion to support an application into the MHP trust integration grant. Would someone consider making? Sharon.
I move to support an application for the trust grant? Is it, how do we say it? To the
Yeah,
MHT?
the Trust Integration Grant, or it does have an official name, but we understand what it is.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Judy. Is there further discussion or questions about that? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Very good. Any noes? See, you're getting into this. Any abstentions? Very good. The trust is in the process of figuring out what it should be doing. And Harry, do you want to give an update on where we are on drafting bylaws for that?
I just received back earlier this week town council's response to my to the trust's request that they provide us with a draft town bylaw outlining the trust's powers and duties and a declaration of trust. I've put the documents on our March 15th agenda. I think that there is much to talk about there without deliberating outside of a meeting. And I will share my comments with the rest of the trustees on March 15th, but I think that there are some things that do need to be discussed.
All right. So, you know, one of the things we're trying to figure out, frankly, is how far we can stretch moderate income as a definition, because there's clearly a group in town, but let's call it workforce housing for lack of a better one, but it's in the 100 to 120% of median income group that we have done a less than great job of providing housing alternatives for them. So I think that's really one of the key areas, as well as this integration with the other housing committees. Any other yes, I'm sorry.
Harry, maybe Harry's the person to just explain to some of us what the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund is.
Sure, there's a enabling statute that allows towns to set up affordable housing trust funds. And there are a couple of features that are important to the flexibility that are presently lacking. For example, real estate transaction decisions right now are stuck in a town meeting schedule. You have to go to town meeting to get authority to purchase or to sell real estate or to transfer it to the housing authority. An affordable housing trust can purchase real estate, can hold it in its own account, and can transfer it without town meeting approval. So we now have the ability to respond to an opportunity immediately, instead of saying to somebody who's selling, well, we'll get back to you in 7 months and maybe we can do it. Because in the real estate world, that doesn't work. The second thing it does is it allows a continuity in terms of funding, in the sense that money that ends up in the trust, however it gets there, donations, appropriations, CPA money, stays there. It doesn't disappear at the end of the fiscal year like other town budget items. Unspent money remains in the trust account, remains under the control of the trust. So we can accumulate a fund to do a significant project without having to go back to town meeting and say, that money we didn't spend 2 years ago, we want it back. We get to keep it until we need it. And those two pieces of flexibility are what we get from, essentially what we get from an affordable housing trust that we don't presently have.
And what is its current funding? How much is in it?
Zero.
Okay, so this is a brand new thing.
Okay, well,
This is a brand new thing, and we're going to seek sources of funding for it.
Okay, well, this zero is perhaps a little bit harsh. There is an existing affordable housing trust that was created under special legislation, and pending the outcome of an audit, there's some pot of money in there. The best guess is it's around $170,000, I think. And that once the audit is complete and that money is the amount is ascertained to a certainty, that will be transferred to the trust because the town meeting voted that at the last annual town meeting. Also, the Community Preservation Committee is proposing a transfer to the trust of $500,000, which will be on the annual town meeting this year. And so there is a hope that there will be money in the piggy bank, and it's a realistic hope. So when I say there's nothing there right now, we hope that's not going to be a permanent condition.
And it was set up by last year's town meeting?
Yeah, we voted to accept the statute, and since then, the select board has appointed 7 trustees, of which myself, Elaine, Gary, and Sharon are 4 of them.
Thank you.
I also think that one thing we've seen, and all the other towns around us have these trusts that they've set up. We're somewhat late to the party since we had an old trust. But there's something called free cash for those people. It's not exactly free, but what happens is, you budget a certain amount snow plowing, and it's an easy winter, and so you haven't spent that much. So you have money in that account, and it's possible to transfer that to free cash and then to make other use of it. And towns are doing things like, I saw the other day, and one town moved, I think it was $400,000 to free cash, from free cash to the housing trust.
Yeah.
So that's another way of seeding that money for housing. I'm sorry, Harry. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, what free cash is, it's everything that hasn't been spent in the annual budget at the end of the fiscal year automatically gets dumped into free cash.
Yeah.
And once the state has certified the amount in your free cash account, you're free to appropriate that for other purposes instead of a tax levy to fund something. So you'll see when at annual town meeting, some part of the annual budget is always appropriated from free cash because that's the surplus from previous years, basically. It's the accumulated operating profit of the town.
Yes.
So we also haven't mentioned the short-term rental tax, which we're hoping.
Thank you.
We're hoping to get a sizable amount of that designated to go towards the trust, because in fact, it is the short-term rentals that is a large part of what's creating the need for more affordable housing. So, and we do have Michael DeVasto was also on this trust, and he's very interested in that particular item.
So yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Sharon. So it is likely that you will see an agenda item on the town warrant to designate X percentage of that short-term rental tax to the housing trust. And that's something other towns are doing. And there's clearly a linkage because short-term rentals are exacerbating the problem of affordability in Wellfleet, the summer rentals. So that in fact may be something that we will be asked to vote on at a later meeting. Okay, anything else on the trust? So land options, unfortunately, I don't think we've found any more land since our last meeting. Elaine, I was going to ask that we've had so much going on and I haven't done anything on this. So remember we were talking about reinvestigating the Coles Neck circles of influence. Are we anywhere on that?
Well, I sent the picture back to Mark Vincent and asked if he saw any possibilities there, but I will have to bug him.
Yeah, if you would nudge him. And then, so for everyone's benefit, this is back when we were looking at, could we use the land adjacent to the transfer station? And we were informed that there are various radius that the state has put on for non-use around the transfer station, or when it was a dump and became a transfer station. And so depending upon the nature of which circle you apply, it largely ate up all of the land around the the transfer station that was town-owned, but there were some little pockets where the circles intersected that we might be able to use to help augment the affordable home ownership program that we were hoping to do with Freeman Avenue.
I
Yes.
had one, oh, go ahead.
Go
I
ahead,
have
Judy,
to
I'm
leave
sorry.
the meeting. So
Thank you so much.
Bye, Judy.
Take care, stay healthy.
you
I
too.
was going to ask Gary if you need me as well, because I think I have an obligation to prepare.
No, that's fine. I think we're about to,
Can
we're
I
about,
ask one question while Harry's still here?
Sure.
yeah, actually, all right.
Just wondering, so with that land that the town owns that's within the seashore boundaries,
Mhm.
that we're not allowed to use for anything but municipal purposes, et cetera, and we've been trying to get our hands on it for years. Is there, and this is just a wild hair, but is there anything that says the town can't sell that property to someone?
Well, whoever buys it is it's still in the seashore, so it's still subject to the seashore legislation.
But aren't
And
private owners allowed to build homes on land in the seashore?
no, any construction after September 1st, 1959 is subject to being condemned by the federal government.
Okay.
And they have in fact done that on rare occasions.
Remember the block, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Okay.
I,
All right,
if you don't
thank
need
you.
me any further, I'd like to.
No,
excuse
thank you very much
myself
for your
and go
time,
back
Harry.
in this house.
So, all right, so I think we're really at an end unless anyone has anything else. I just want to affirm that our next meeting will be March 18th. And
I can be the secretary.
oh, excellent.
Okay.
And do people prefer 4 or 5 o'clock? Is there a preference?
Doesn't matter to me.
I like 4.
I was going to say it's starting to get lighter, so I don't mind pushing it back. I think that may actually be after the end of daylight savings time. Let's right around then.
You know, in the future, if Elizabeth does decide to join us, we might need to alter our meeting schedules a little bit
Right.
because, you know, when you have working, you know, people who are
Right.
working and raising children might have other needs than some of us who are not.
So Elizabeth, is 5 o'clock better for you than 4 o'clock generally, or it is equally bad?
I'd say it's better because me and my husband, we're both shell fishermen. So, you know, as long as we have daylight, we stay pretty busy. So
Elizabeth, we have another meeting that Michael DeVasto is on, and we schedule it regarding the tides. So
yeah.
we're not opposed to that. But shall we say 5 o'clock for the 18th? Does that work? Does anyone have a preference one way or the other? No? Okay, let's say 5 o'clock on the 18th, and I will post that. Is there anything else?
No.
I entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Excellent. Welcome aboard, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Nice
Gary.
to meet you, Elizabeth.
Thank you all and stay healthy.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.